Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime drama this hour with an episode of the Mutual program Under Arrest, starring Joe DeSantis, who never really had a starring role on a major show, but this is a great show. From 74 years ago, February 6, 1949, the Sam Carver Case. And we thank you for joining us on this Monday, 6th day of February, 37th day of the year, 329 days left till we get to 2024. In Paris on this date in 1778, a treaty signed by the U.S. and France signaling the official recognition of the new republic. 1788, Massachusetts became the sixth state of the Union to ratify the Constitution. 1815, New Jersey granted the first American railroad charter. In 1843, the first minstrel show in the U.S., the Virginia Minstrels, opened. In 1862, Ulysses S. Grant gave the U.S. its first victory of the Civil War by capturing Fort Henry, Tennessee, known as the Battle of Fort Henry. The 20th Amendment to the Constitution went into effect on this date in 1933, shortening the time from election to inauguration. Jack Kilby of Texas Instruments filed the first patent for an integrated circuit in 1959. On that same date, 1959, at Cape Canaveral, the first successful test firing of a Titan intercontinental ballistic missile. 1971, on the Apollo 14 mission, Alan Shepard became the first person to hit a golf ball on the moon.
Houston, while you're looking that up, you might recognize what I have in my hand is the handle for the contingency sample return. It just so happens to have a genuine 6-iron on the bottom of it. In my left hand, I have a little white pellet that's familiar to millions of Americans. Drop it down. Unfortunately, the suit is so stiff I can't do this with two hands, but I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here. And he got more dirt than ball that time. Got more dirt than ball. Here we go again.
That looked like a slice to me, Al.
There we go. Ready to die. One more. Miles and miles and miles.
Yeah, with lunar gravity, or the lack thereof, a ball would go for miles and miles and miles. Alan Shepard golfing on the moon on this date in 1971. Washington National Airport renamed on this date in 1998 to Ronald Reagan National Airport. It was on this date in 1999 Hillary Clinton became the first lady to run for and be elected to the Senate.
New York defined what was possible in the 20th century, and New York can make what seems impossible today possible in the 21st century, and that's why I want to be your senator from New York. Thank you all very much.
Hillary Clinton elected to the Senate on this date in 1999. And in 2018, Elon Musk's SpaceX Falcon Heavy, a super heavy launch vehicle, made its maiden flight in 2018. Among those passing away on this date in history, Falco, the Austrian singer. Also, comic book writer Jack Kirby, the man who created Captain America, the Fantastic Four, and the Hulk. Also, actor Joseph Cotton, singer, comedian, actor Danny Thomas, Hugo Montenegro, who did that wonderful music, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, musician Vince Guaraldi, jazz man who did some wonderful music for the Charlie Brown television shows, and passing away on this date, Arthur Ashe.
Arthur Ashe was just plain better than most of us.
Former congressman, former UN ambassador, and former mayor of Atlanta, Andrew Young, talking about the fine tennis player Arthur Ashe, who passed away on this date in 1993. Also passing away on this date, Beach Boys' Carl Wilson, actor James Whitmore, and the world's foremost authority, Professor Irwin Corey. Very, very funny man. This is the birth date of Babe Ruth.
Are 714 home runs the most you ever hit?
Well, it's quite a few, isn't it? Well, I tell you, in the old days, but say back up to 1921 or 20, if your ball club needed one run, it was 3 men on base in the 9th inning. And for instance, I got up there and hit a home run. It didn't count for a home run. It only counted for one run driven in. So you make the score 2-1 or 3-2, something like that. Well, I hit quite a few like that.
The Bambino, Babe Ruth, born on this date in history. Vice President Aaron Burr, born on this date. The German mistress of Adolf Hitler, Eva Braun. The voice actor Thurl Ravenscroft. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. Wonderful voice. Wish I had it. Hungarian actress Zsa Zsa Gabor, darling, born on this date. Patrick McNee, probably best remembered to me anyway, for his role in the British TV show The Avengers, not related to the comic book group, but he did a lot of other work too. Actor Rip Torn, born on this date. Jamaican singer Bob Marley, singer Natalie Cole, and we cannot forget President Ronald Reagan, born on this date.
This is Ronald Reagan speaking to you from Hollywood. You know me as a motion picture actor. But tonight I'm just a citizen, pretty concerned about the national election next month, and more than a little impatient with those promises the Republicans made before they got control of Congress a couple of years ago.
I can't help but think about how often, at moments of accomplishment and triumph, as well as crisis and heartbreak, we came together in this way. A president giving his accounting to those under our system of government to whom he is accountable. We've shared a great deal together. For me, it's been a special relationship. Believe me, Saturdays will never seem the same. I'll miss you.
Ronald Reagan from back in the days when he was a Democrat, and then at the end as he was ending his 8 years in office. Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States, born on this date in 1911. Happy birthday number 84 to B.J. Honeycutt on MASH, Mike Farrell, 84 today. News anchor Tom Brokaw, 83. Teen idol Fabian, 80 years old today. She was best known as Peggy Hill on King of the Hill. Kathy Najimy is 66. From The Parenthood, Robert Townsend is 66. Guns N' Roses' Axl Rose is 61. Rick Astley, never going to give you up, never going to let you down. I guess it's Astley, isn't it? Rick Astley is 57 today. From Teen Wolf and Gotham, Crystal Reed, 38. And from Polar Express and 2.5 Men, Tinashe is 30 years old today. Those some of the people celebrating the 6th day of February as their birthday. And if this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the 4 freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you!
And from 74 years ago, February 6, 1949, Joe DeSantis starring in Under Arrest. That's coming up next on this Monday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we go back to February 6, 1949, 74 years ago today, and check in with Mutual and Joe DeSantis starring in the program Under Arrest.
Mutual presents Under Arrest.
Into your cells.
Criminals behind bars. Under Arrest, the story of Police Captain Jim Scott's fight against crime.
Captain Scott.
Harry Gavin, Jim.
Yeah?
I'm at Madame Chirini's.
Great. Aren't you supposed to be on duty?
I am. I'm sitting up with a corpse.
Has the corpse got a name?
Sure has. Jerome K. Wade.
Jerome K. Not the gun manufacturer.
That's right.
The fellow who used to be partners with Sam Carver?
On the button. He's been shot.
Who did it?
Sam Carver.
Oh, you're crazy. Sam Carver's been dead for 4 years.
Yeah, I know.
Now, look, Gavin. From what you tell me, an important man's been murdered. I don't like to joke about such things.
I'm not kidding. Madame Chirini's a medium. She swears Sam Carver did it.
A medium?
Yeah, one of those people who bring back the dead. Looks like she brought back Sam Carver. Cute, huh?
I didn't think it was cute. The Sam Carver case had been looked upon as a suicide. Carver was partners with Wade in the gun factory, and it was his job to inspect the guns before shipment. He passed a defective bunch, and they were shipped to the Army. Some of the boys at Okinawa got a rough deal when the guns didn't function as called for, and the incident created quite a scandal. Carver wrote a full confession, then blew his brains out in the library of his home. Only one thing didn't jibe. We never could locate the gun. Madame Chirini's place was located over the Red Parrot Bar and Grill. You had to pass through the bar to reach the back steps.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Get my fortune told. I have a date with Madame Chirini.
Wise guy, huh? Well, if I were... Oh, excuse me. Didn't know you wore a badge.
That's okay. Which way is it?
Turn right through the door there, and it's one flight up at the head of the stairs.
Thanks.
Hello, Captain.
Oh, Larry. Where is it?
Right here. That third eye in the middle of his head is a bullet hole.
Thanks. You find a gun to go with it?
No, Jim, and I've been all over the room.
No gun?
That's right. Just like it was with his partner, Sam Carver. This is Madame Chirini.
Oh?
This is a terrible thing to happen, Captain. I've been practicing for 30 years, and I never had any trouble before.
There's always a first time.
Oh, believe me, Captain, I run a respectable place. Such a thing has never happened to me.
Nothing happened to you. Not yet. It happened to Wade. Were you here when he was shot?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
I was in my trance. Mr. Wade wanted to communicate with the spirit of his dead partner. We held a seance. I remember nothing. I just reached through to my control.
Control?
The spirit who makes my contacts for me, Kathy. Communication was established. The next thing I knew, I heard a shot. It penetrated the veil, and I came back to Earth once more. The room was pitch black except for a light behind me. I turned and saw him. Just as plain as I see you now. It was Sam Carver, a gun in his hand. Oh, it was a beautiful materialization. Beautiful.
Yes, no doubt. What happened then?
It vanished right into thin air. Of course, it couldn't stay once I was my conscious self.
Of course.
I turned on the light. The switch is right here under the table.
Oh?
Mr. Wade was exactly opposite me. He had a look on his face, a look that I'll never forget. His mouth was open as though he were about to say something. Then he toppled out of his chair, just as he is now.
You were conducting a seance?
Yes.
You need more than 2 people for a seance. Who else was here?
Mrs. Wade and Mrs. Carver.
Where are they now?
Mrs. Carver took Mrs. Wade home.
You mean Mrs. Wade saw her husband shot and she left just like that?
Oh, she was hysterical. She kept screaming about divine judgment, and our husband got what he deserved. Benny might be able to tell you more about it. He helped her out.
Benny?
The bartender downstairs. He came running up just as soon as he heard the shot. Do you want to talk to him?
Yeah. Yeah, go get him, Larry.
Check.
I think it might not be such a bad idea to question this Benny. While Gavin went to get the bartender, I took a look around the room. Nothing unusual about it. No secret trapdoors, sliding panels, nothing like that. There were heavy plush hangings, but they covered bare walls only. A low-hanging chandelier hung over the round table, and the light switch, as she said, was under the table. But you couldn't see any props, nothing to create contrived effects. Madame Chirini herself didn't look the part of the conventional medium, except for the fact that she was dressed completely in black and had a pair of the deepest, blackest eyes I've ever seen.
Here he is, Captain.
Hello, Benny.
Captain?
Madame Chirini tells me you rushed up to the room as soon as you heard the shot. Is that right?
Yep.
Why?
Why?
Weren't you afraid of getting shot yourself?
Oh, I see what you mean, Captain.
Well, no, frankly, I didn't think of that. Madame Cherini's a good friend of mine. I only thought she might be in trouble.
And you're not afraid of guns?
Not as much as most people, I guess. In a way, I'm kind of used to them.
Where did you get used to them?
Okinawa.
Okinawa?
Yeah, there was a war. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember, Benny. I also remember a certain ugly incident. Bad guns delivered to our boys in a certain company. Could be some of your buddies died on that account. Jerome K. Wade and Sam Carver manufactured those guns. I'm not saying Wade didn't deserve to die, Benny.
I ain't saying he didn't deserve it either. I think that... Hey, why look at me? I didn't do it.
There was nobody in the room but the women when you entered, and nobody could have passed you on the stairs. Maybe you didn't run into the room at all, Benny. Maybe you were here all the time.
Nuts, I was down at the bar waiting on my customers till I heard that shot.
Why couldn't it have...
Yes, exactly. Why couldn't it have been one of the women?
I don't think so. As I remember seances, you all hold hands around the table. Isn't that right, Madame Cherini?
That's right, Captain Scott.
And Wade held each of the women by the hand, and they in turn held the hands of Madame Cherini. Doesn't seem possible, unless all three women were in league to kill Wade. In that case, the other two could have released Madame Cherini, but that seems like too long a shot.
Yeah? Well, then maybe you can explain how I got to look like Sam Carver, huh? They all agree that it was the ghost of Sam Carver who killed Wade.
Who do you mean all?
Mrs. Carver, Mrs. Wade, and Madame Cherini here.
That's right, Captain. We all recognized him. There couldn't have been any doubt that it was Sam Carver.
Sam Carver's been dead for 4 years. Yet you're sure you recognized him. You must have known him well.
Very well. Sam Carver was interested in spiritualism. Mr. Wade always used to laugh at him.
Yet you claim it was Wade who asked for this seance. And it was here he was murdered. Now, who killed him?
Sam Carver.
Bunk. Dead men don't go around killing people.
In my profession, Captain, you find out that dead people are not quite as dead as they seem.
I got a funny feeling as I looked at the corpse. There was something in the expression. Kind of fixed smile. And the bullet hole Larry Gavin had described as a third eye. For a moment in the dim light, I could have sworn the dead man winked. But it's my job to catch live murderers, not ghosts. Jerome K. Wade was killed by a slug from a .32. Nothing ghostly about that. But as far as the gun was concerned, it might just as well have been ectoplasm. I warned Madame Cherini and Benny, the bartender, not to leave town. Lieutenant Gavin went to look up Mrs. Wade and get her story. Myself, I went to pay a call on Mrs. Sam Carver.
Captain Scott, I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting.
Quite all right, Mrs. Carver. Naturally, you're upset.
Naturally. First Sam, then poor Jerry. Would you care for a drink? I think I need one.
Thank you. I don't. She looked anything but upset. Mrs. Carver must have been quite a beauty in her day, and her day was not quite past. She moved like an animal with a lithe, sensuous grace. She smiled invitingly and sank down on the couch beside me, sipping her drink. Pity we have to meet always under these circumstances.
Isn't it? I won't pretend I'm exactly grief-stricken about Jerry Wade. He was just as responsible as my husband, even more so, for that arms shipment. Yet poor Sam took all the blame.
What happened tonight? Exactly.
Probably just what you already heard. Mr. Wade invited me to attend this seance.
I thought Mr. Wade didn't believe in such things.
No, but he knew I did.
Oh?
Sam and I were always great believers in spiritualism, and especially in Madame Cherini.
Well, what was Wade's idea?
To convince me he had nothing to do with Sam's passing. I've always suspected something peculiar about my husband's death. I could never quite believe that Sam committed suicide, although it was I who found the body and the gun was right next to his hand.
That gun? What happened to it?
It simply disappeared.
Like the murderer disappeared tonight?
Murderer? I'm sorry. The truth is, Captain, I don't like my husband being called a murderer.
Your husband? Oh, you mean the ghost.
I saw it with my own eyes. So did the Wades and Madame Cherini. There couldn't have been any disguise.
Well, it was dark in the room.
There was a light around him. He was pale and his eyes were burning. He looked straight at Jerry Wade. The same gun was in his hands.
The same gun? How do you know?
Don't ask me how, I just knew.
Yes, go on.
He looked straight at Wade, and I heard Wade say in a strange, broken voice, No, Sam, I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to, honest. And then...
Yes?
my husband uttered one word, murderer, and fired. Madame Cherini awoke, and my husband disappeared.
With the gun?
Of course.
Now, look here, Mrs. Carver. That was no ghostly bullet which killed Jerry Wade. It was a real bullet like the one which killed your husband. By the way, who was present in this house the night your husband was shot?
Was shot? You don't think he killed himself then?
I'm not sure. In any case, he was shot. I'm asking you who was here.
Well, there were Mr. and Mrs. Wade, my son.
Your son?
John. He'd just come home from college. There was quite an argument between him and his father. It was on account of that scandal about the guns.
Where is he now?
Away at school at Yale.
Yes, go on. Anybody else?
Oh, yes, of course. There was Madame Cherini. She stayed to dinner. We were going to have a séance later.
Who was the last person who saw your husband alive?
Madame Cherini, I think. She had a talk with Sam in the library. Sam was very upset about the argument with John. Madame Cherini was his advisor.
You don't look like the mother of a grown son.
Thank you, Captain. Are all policemen so gallant?
I imagine they would be. With you?
Thank you again. Are you sure you don't care for a drink?
Quite sure.
Too bad, Captain. We could both do with a bit of relaxation.
February 6, 1949, Under Arrest on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 74 years ago today follows these important messages from your favorite radio station. Thanks for spending part of your Monday with us here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of Under Arrest as it was originally broadcast on Sunday, February 6, 1949. In the newspapers of that Sunday 74 years ago, these were some of the headlines. The Senate Labor Committee climaxed 8 hours of public squabbling Saturday night with Senator Neely, the Democrat from West Virginia, roaring, "You keep your mouth shut," to Senator Taft, the Republican of Ohio. Thus ended the sixth day of one of the bitterest hearings in recent Senate history, a hearing on the Taft-Hartley Act and the Truman administration's proposal to replace it with a new law. During the long day and evening, Democrats accused Republicans of dragging out the hearings to make it impossible to finish by the February 10th deadline they had fixed. A Republican from Vermont, Senator Aiken, shot back that the Democrats were treating the proposed bill purely as a political measure, while the Democrat from Montana, Senator Murray, angrily accused a witness, Gerald D. Riley, who helped write the Taft-Hartley Act, of double-crossing labor, and said Riley got in here on false pretenses. Democrats ridiculed Senator Taft and disputed his prediction that Congress will keep most of the Taft-Hartley provisions on the books. Congress set out Saturday to study how far price and employment drops are going to take us. The Senate-House Joint Economic Committee scheduled public roundtable discussions beginning Tuesday, calling in first agriculture and economic experts. The committee wanted to find out if the declines in jobs and prices is merely a post-war adjustment or a warning of a possible general depression. The Democrat from Wyoming, Senator O'Mahony, is chairman of the group. January employment off 700,000 on the heels of a number of price declines. Stock and commodity markets have slumped lately. Government officials say it's not alarming, but it is too early to say whether it's a trend. A top-ranking Republican said Saturday price and employment declines mean rent controls may not be needed much longer. For the same reason, he urged Congress to await developments before handing President Truman anti-inflation powers. The lawmaker, Representative Wolcott of Michigan, the senior GOP member of the House Banking Committee, suggested a 6-month as-is continuation of rent ceilings. The president wants those laws strengthened and extended for 2 years. Henry Adams' bright idea saved his automobile from being wrecked by a train. Adams' car stalled at the Ohio Street crossing in Joliet, Illinois, as he drove to work. Train number 17 of the Gulf Mobile and Ohio Railroad was approaching, but fast. 27-year-old Adam is a railroad brakeman. He grabbed his brakeman's lantern and flagged down the train. Well, the big diesel train slowed and just nudged Adam's car. Total damage, just a dented fender. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Sunday, February 6, 1949, on your radio under arrest, which continues following these messages on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Gerald Moore on Tuesday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, going back 73 years, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe and the Long Arm. Marlowe reluctantly returns to Bay City to help unframe a pal who's been accused of murder. That's on tomorrow's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now the conclusion of Under Arrest, the Sam Carver murder case, 74 years ago today, February 6, 1949.
It was late when I got to my office next morning. Larry Gavin had seen Mrs. Wade in a story checked with those of Madame Cherini, Benny, and Mrs. Carver in every particular, even to the exact words used by her husband and the ghost. Lieutenant Gavin had his own theory about the crime, and I wasn't too sure he was wrong.
Jim, I say it's all hypnosis. This medium sets up the mood, gets them all into a frame of mind where they're ready to believe anything. She shot Wade. It was dark in that room. How else could anybody plug him right in the middle of the forehead without being close up and knowing exactly where he was sitting?
Well, maybe an ordinary guy couldn't, but a ghost could.
Now, don't tell me you're going soft in the head, too.
Well, all the stories check. They couldn't all have been in on a plot to kill Jerry Wade.
I don't say they were. I'm saying the old gal hypnotized him. It adds up.
Maybe. I'd like to check with ballistics first. Captain Scott, get me the lab.
Yes, sir. Yes?
Captain Scott, did you check the Wade bullet against the bullet in the Carver file?
Yes, I did, Captain.
Well?
It's from the same gun, Captain. There's no doubt about it.
Are you sure it's from the same gun?
Positive.
Thanks.
Well, that clinches it. It must be the medium.
Why?
Wasn't she there the night Carver was shot?
Right.
Aren't all these mediums pretty good sleight-of-hand artists?
Right.
Wouldn't it have been a simple matter for a good magician to divert attention and pick up the gun in Carver's hand?
Right.
And wouldn't she use the same gun to kill Wade?
Wrong.
Why not?
Why should she plan a murder in her own home, where everything points against her?
So she could blame it on a ghost.
What motive would she have in killing Wade?
He thought she was a phony. He was an enemy of Sam Carver's, one of her oldest friends.
Not enough. Nobody risks the chair for that.
Then what do you think? The ghost did it?
Maybe.
Oh, have you gone nuts?
Maybe. Get me the Red Parrot Bar and Grill.
What are you going to do?
Make an appointment with the ghost.
Oh.
Hello?
Benny, Captain Scott.
Oh, yeah, Captain.
Could you call upstairs and bring Madame Cherini to the phone?
Don't have to call her, Captain. She's right here.
No, well, you know, she's right there.
Madam Cherini, this call is for you. Take it here.
Yes, Captain Scott?
Madame Cherini, you claim you brought back the spirit of Sam Carver last night. Materialized, I think, is the word you used.
Yes, Captain.
Then, could you materialize this spirit again for me?
I don't think so. Why should you want me to do that?
I'd like to remind you, Madame Cherini, this ghost is wanted for murder.
Oh, nonsense, Captain. You can't electrocute a ghost.
We can try.
I won't do it.
Madame Cherini, I'm afraid you don't realize your position. If you're a faker, then the ghost killer is something cooked up by you, and you're under suspicion of murder. If you're on the level, it's up to you to prove it by producing the ghost.
Spirit materializations are not easy. I may not be successful.
Well, that would be too bad for you.
The atmosphere has to be propitious.
What's wrong with the atmosphere?
There's too many policemen. They're all over the place. Spirits are allergic to policemen.
Well, send them away.
I can't rely upon you for that.
You've got my word.
All right, then.
When?
Tonight. Tomorrow morning, rather. Say about 3 a.m.
Why so late?
I want the circumstances to be favorable. I don't want any noise from downstairs. At 3 a.m., the bar will be closed.
Okay, you've got a deal.
One more thing.
What is it?
We'll need at least 2 others, sympathetic spirits. I think I can get Mrs. Carver.
Fine. How about Mrs. Wade?
Oh, I'm afraid she's too upset. I have it. We'll use Benny.
The bartender? Is he sympathetic with spirits?
You ought to be. Dishes enough of them out.
Shut up.
What is that?
I'm sorry, Madame Cherini. I wasn't talking to you. Okay, it's a date, 3 a.m.
Another thing. You must purify your mind.
Oh? Well, how do I do that?
Go into seclusion.
Seclusion?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Larry, who have you got trailing Madame Cherini?
Hennessy.
Where is he now?
Across the street in a cigar store at Maple and Clark.
Phone him. Tell him not to lose sight of Madame Cherini for a minute. It's urgent.
Okay. Where are you going?
Into seclusion. You heard what Madame Cherini said.
Where can I reach you?
My room. Phone me if it's important. Hello?
Jim, Larry Gavin, and this is important.
Yes?
Hennessy's been telling Madame Cherini she's gone to Mrs. Carver's house.
Only natural. He's inviting her to the seance.
She's been in there with her for over an hour. If all she wanted was to invite her, she could have used the phone.
I see. Okay, I'll take care of it.
You going to the Carver house?
No, I'll wait for Madame Cherini at the bar in the room.
Is that the way to purify your mind?
It's my way. Did you call the boys off?
Yes, Captain. Do you think it's smart?
I'll let you know after the night. All right, if anything comes up, I'll be at the bar.
Why, I wish I were a captain.
Oh, good evening, Captain. What's your pleasure?
Anything with the original label? Madame Cherini told you about the seance?
Yeah.
Ever been to one of those things before?
Yeah, lots of times. I'll have to hold your hand tonight, Captain. You mind?
Oh, not so long as somebody holds your other hand.
Here it is, Captain.
Well, here's mud in your eye.
Not mud, Captain. Ectoplasm.
Captain Scott, I didn't expect to find you here.
Just checking up, Madame Cherini, making sure everything's all right for the seance. But, shouldn't you be resting yourself? Is
Well, even mediums can use a little fresh air.
that all you went out for? Fresh air?
And asked Mrs. Carver to attend.
Will she?
Yes.
Fine.
This is hardly the atmosphere for you before a seance. You should be alone with your thoughts.
I was just going, but just one question. Mrs. Carver told me you spoke to her husband shortly before his death.
Yes?
Did he sound to you like a man who was going to commit suicide?
No.
Yet he left a suicide note.
Not a suicide note, Captain Scott. A confession. There's a difference.
Suppose it weren't suicide. Have you any theory about what might have happened?
Well, this is only a supposition, mind you, but in the light of recent events...
Like the ghost of Sam Carver returning to shoot Jerry Wade?
Exactly. There was a big argument at the Carver house the night he was killed. His son, John, wanted both Wade and Carver to confess and take the consequences. Shortly afterward, both men retired to the library.
And what happened?
Well, I wasn't there. I can only suppose.
Yes?
Wade could have pretended to be convinced that it was best for them both to write full confessions.
Then what?
Once the confessions were written, Wade could have shot him and placed the gun near his hand. Then all Wade would have to do was sneak out through a side exit, taking his own confession with him and leaving Carver's. It would look to everyone as though Sam Carver had taken his own life in remorse.
And what could have happened to the gun?
Oh, Wade would have been afraid of his prints on the gun. He could have pocketed it later while no one was looking.
Or someone else could have picked it up. Yourself, for instance.
What do you mean?
Skip it. Did you tell Wade about your theory?
I did make certain suggestions.
Enough to convince the unbelieving Wade to attend a seance? Now, this is only a theory, mind you, Madame Cherini, but I'm going to be as generous with you as you are with me. Suppose you were the one who lifted the gun. Suppose you weren't an authentic medium, and suppose you wanted to frighten Wade into a confession of guilt. A confession only you would be able to force.
Why should I want to do that?
It's an ugly word, Madame Cherini. Blackmail.
Well, there's an uglier word, Captain Scott. Murder. If such was my intention, why should I kill the goose that lays the golden eggs?
Well, it's only a theory, Madame Cherini. I was only supposing you were a fake. You are an authentic medium, aren't you?
Of course, Captain. But you'll find that out tonight, won't you?
I hope to find out a lot of things tonight. It was uncanny. I now understood the purpose of the curtains on the walls and the dark dress worn by the medium. It was to absorb even the faintest suggestion of light. Try as I would, my eyes could not penetrate the darkness. I sat directly opposite Madame Cherini. Mrs. Carver held my left hand, and I could feel her knee brush mine under the table. Benny held my right hand. The medium held theirs. The circle made a chain of communication that was almost electrical. Through the hands of those next to me, I could feel the medium stiffen as she went into a trance. She began to moan, and then called upon her control, the spirit who was a guide in the other world.
Oh. Kathy. Kathy. Are you there? Kathy. Kathy, answer me. 2 raps if you can come through. 3 me if there is interference. Do you hear me? Good. Are the channels clear tonight? 2 raps, yes. 3, no. I will speak no more. Mrs. Carver will ask you questions, and you will answer her through me. Is that clear?
Kathy? Can you hear me? Is the spirit of my husband with you? Can you make him materialize? Kathy, can you hear me? Yes. Can you make my husband appear?
Mrs. Carver's hand gripped mine tightly, and I felt the bartender's hand stiffen. I strained my ears, anxious to catch the slightest sound. I thought I heard the creaking of the hall door, but it might have been the wind. We sat tense, holding our breaths.
Kathy!
I couldn't believe my eyes. Slowly, a circle of light began to form at the other end of the room. A man's head and shoulders were framed in the light, as though suspended in midair. The face was supernaturally pale, the eyes dark and glowing.
Sam! Sam! Captain Scott is here. He's a policeman. Show him what you did last night.
From nowhere, a hand appeared, a hand with a gun. The figure uttered one word. Murderer. I heard a click. I crashed to the floor, sweeping Mrs. Carver down with me. There was a flash, and the shot reverberated through the room like a thunderbolt. Under cover of the darkness, I lunged toward the figure with the gun. He seemed to be running toward the fire escape window. There was a crash as the window broke. I pulled my gun and started after him. Too late, I realized I'd been tricked. The so-called Spectre had thrown something through the window, probably the gun, and then made for the hall door leading to the stairs. I heard him go running down the stairs. Madame Cherini! Madame Cherini! Put on the lights!
What is it? What's happened?
Put on the lights. The switch. Under the table. Mrs. Carver found the switch. For a moment, I could not get used to the glare. When I was able to focus my eyes, I saw Madame Cherini on the floor.
She's dead.
The hole was in back of the head this time. Ghost or no ghost, our murderer was a dead shot. And then I noticed Benny was gone.
Down the stairs.
I was about to follow when I heard a noise in the hall. Somebody was coming up.
Okay, Chief. Here's your ghost.
John! Oh, John!
No doubt about it. The ghost was John Carver, Mrs. Carver's son. It explained the resemblance to Sam. The resemblance had fooled Mrs. Wade and trapped her husband into blurting out a confession. John Carver was dressed all in black. The inside of his black topcoat was smeared with phosphorescent paint from the waist up. In the darkness of the room, all he had to do was to open his coat slightly to get the ghostly glow we had all seen.
Nabbed him as he came charging outside. He almost got away in the dark. It's a good thing his coat was open.
Good thing you disobeyed my orders and was here to catch him. Well, what have you got to say for yourself, John?
It wasn't his fault. He didn't know what he was doing.
No, it's all right, Mother. Yes. I killed Wade. He deserved to die.
And the medium?
Madame Cherini started the whole thing. She knew I never believed my father committed suicide. She came to me with a plan for trapping Wade into a confession. Got me to play the ghost.
It was Madame Cherini who gave you the gun?
Yes, she had smeared it with some of that shiny paint to scare Wade. That was my idea, too, at first. But when I heard Wade admitting his guilt, practically confessing he murdered my father, Something snapped inside of me. I pulled the trigger. I'm a good shot.
We know that much.
I hid behind the curtain. When Benny took Mother and Mrs. Wade down, I stole after them. The bar was crowded. All eyes were on Mrs. Wade, who was hysterical. As they left through the front door, I slipped in, mixed with the crowd, and made my getaway.
Why did you kill Madame Cherini?
She came to the house. She was furious because I'd shot Wade. Said something about killing the goose who laid the golden eggs. It was evidently her intention to blackmail him. Wade was dead, so she chose to blackmail me instead through Mother.
John, why did you?
My mother had nothing to do with all this. I couldn't stand by and see that woman tortured.
I know. And I'm not saying I don't understand, son. But no man is big enough to take the law into his own hands. Ready to go, Larry?
All set, Jim.
Take your prisoner.
Under arrest.
Into your cells. All prisoners present and accounted for.
You have just heard Under Arrest, presented by Mutual, a new series featuring Joe DeSantis as Police Captain Jim Scott. Under Arrest is directed by Martin Martner. Today's drama was written by Norman Lessing. Original music is composed and played by Milton Kay. Madame Cherini was played by Virginia Payne, Mrs. Carver by Linda Watkins, John Carver by Leon Janney, Lieutenant Gavin by Carl Eastman, and Benny by Annie Donnelly. All names of persons used in Under Arrest are fictitious. Any resemblance to names of actual persons, living or dead, is coincidental. Broadcast engineer, Cy Paget. Sound effects, Ronnie Harper and Walt Shaver. Your announcer is Jack Curtis. This program came from New York.
February 6, 1949, Under Arrest on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Visit our webpage, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows. Learn about building classic radio collections of your own. You can also contact me there, find our social media links, and you can buy me a coffee. That's at classicradio.stream. Have yourself a great day. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.